All right. So how was your week and weekend?
It's been okay. I've been trying to get caught up on everything and trying to figure out how to do that without causing more flare-ups and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's been pretty good.
Well, good. I'm glad you're able to keep working.
Yeah.
I have had issues with chronic illness in the past,
Hmm.
and what's so irritating to me, I wish that chronic illness would flare up when you've got absolutely nothing to go on going on, and you're done with your vacation and everything. But it
Yeah.
seems like one of the issues that it has to have is it has to come at the most inconvenient of times.
Yep.
Now, honestly, I was able to use that to my benefit a little bit. If there was like a family picnic or whatever, I let everybody out know that, especially extended family with in-laws and everything, I let everybody know that I did have a chronic illness, and that was stress that would just happen to be something that made the illness flare up. And so it did get me out of a couple really awkward get-togethers, which
Yep.
that part was nice.
Yeah.
Last week, my wife and her son hiked the Grand Canyon and stayed overnight. So Wednesday, I just picked them up, but I called it a rescue vehicle because I think that sounds more impressive. So I was the rescue vehicle. I went down, and I actually got in trouble with the Park Service because when they were in the canyon, they were told that there was only one trail that was open. On the website says the other trail was open. And so I went to the other trail, and there were people that were coming up and coming out of there, but that wasn't the trailhead that they were going to. So I went back to the other one. That road was actually blocked off, and it said tour vans only. And I thought, there's no. Why are they being told that there's only one way out, and that is being blocked off, and the only way that you can get out of the park is by paying for access to, and it just irritated me. So I went around the barricade, and I picked him up, and while I was there, a Park Service guy came in and said, "You're not supposed to park here." I So what do you mean? There's no signs posted saying I can't. And I just said, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that. We'll leave right away. And he kind of huffed and hemmed and hawed, and then turned around and left. And I thought, I, if they want me to, I would be happy to photocopy signs and paste them up, on the trail, and say, go to this trailhead instead. But nobody asked me, so sigh. But I'm glad that I switched the class to Tuesday because we didn't get back here until like 11:30 at night. So which would have made class a little bit later than anybody wants. And then this week, um, yesterday, I had to drive to Monticello and take out some windows from the temple there because they're having me repair them. And the drive out wasn't too bad, but the drive back, I got to the halfway point and was really excited. I was almost home until I realized it was only the halfway point. So that kind of sucked.
Oh no.
But other than that, the week was pretty decent.
Good.
Well, there were a couple students that pointed out that the due dates were off. And what is my policy on due dates? Do you remember?
They're very flexible.
Yeah. Should you worry about them or stress about them?
No.
No. And they let me know that the due dates were coming up, and people were getting excited. And I realized that again, I will spot check, and it looks to me like some of the dates were switched, but not all of them are. And so, as we are going through a module, if you look ahead and you see that you've got a bunch of things due all at once, just let me know. And this isn't just for you, Samantha. This is for everybody who's listening. Just let me know. Don't stress about it. Don't do more than you can handle, and do so much that you're going to make yourself frazzled about the stress. So, and it's good for people. I do appreciate the people that did let me know, because then I could go through and change them. Because what should be happening is, as you are finishing up the structures for a module, getting ready to turn them in, you should also be introduced to the reading and the background videos and stuff like that for the next module. So they should be overlapping a little bit, because I want people to kind of make associations with the next module background information as you are finishing up the projects for the previous module. I kind of like that. I don't like just stopping everything and then going to the next one, because I think it is really important to at least make an environment so you can make connections if your brain works like that. And you artists are all pretty weird anyway, so I'm pretty confident your brain will make those kind of connections. Yeah, artists, we're kind of a breed apart, aren't we? I mean, can you imagine like some of these horror movies where people are going through woods and stuff, if all the people in the group were actual artists, not the fake ones the movie guys have? Because the actual artists would be stopping and looking at the figure's outfit, say, "Wow, I love that. That mean that skull is exquisitely done." You know, or you'd be looking at the plants and stuff, say, "Oh, I want to draw that." Get out your sketchbook, and everybody, all the director is, you know, screaming, "Come on, you're supposed to run." Say, "Why? This is cool looking."
I know. I went up Table Fork Canyon, like up by Table Fork Creek and everything like that. Oh, sorry, Reservoir. And because I was taking pictures for one of my other classes, and my boyfriend came with me, and I'm like, "Oh, I want to take a picture here." And of course, I'm like in the middle of the road around a blind curve, and he goes, "This is not the smartest thing to be doing right now." I'll be fine. Exactly. I'll run.
Oh, well, and we saw some bison coming back from the Grand Canyon, and of course we had to pull over and look and everything like that. And I don't know, if normal people were in the car with us, it probably wouldn't have been the best thing. Oh well, you do what you can. I'm just glad that other people share that. Now, I do want to look at. There was another wire sculpture turned in, and I want to look at that and just go over it a little bit, and we'll talk about it. And again, you know, this is one of these things where I want to look at stuff, talk about what is good about it, and what could possibly be improved. And again, it's not whether or not your art is any good. By the time you guys get in this class, you've already established yourselves as professional artists anyway. It is the discussion all relates to how the art relates to our the assignment. And that's it. You guys understand that by now, right? Okay, good. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share this. All right. Okay, so here's the critter. There are some really good things about this, and I'm going to point this out because when this person originally turned this in, I believe it wasn't the same. I really like how the volume of this vase is created with the wire. I think that's very successful. One of the things they did was just have a loop here for the leaves, for each of the leaves. And I told them we really need to make this more three-dimensional. Look at what they did with the leaf. And I love the fact that they didn't just, I've said the same thing to other students before. And Samantha, can you see where my mouse is?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm really impressed how this person responded, because before I said you got to do something with the veins, the person would just take wire and bend it back and make a little zigzag line, and that's it. And this individual actually made the wire and bent it, attached it at different spots, and did a vertical line as well, and did that for both the leaves. I'm impressed with that. I think that's really good. One thing I don't like, which is not a reflection on this, but you see the background has this little distracting thing here. And that's something that, if you see something like that going on, move your sculpture over a bit and trim the edge so we don't get the distraction. But this is not bad for that. And one thing that I want to point out is that you look at how the vase is constructed, the leaves, and then the flower itself. Each of them is a unique way of creating volume with wire. And I think that that's really interesting. And that the flower, which you'd think would have the most detail, is essentially just loops, making a form in space. But I think that this, especially compared to what it was, I think that this one is very successful in what they were doing. What's your reaction to this, Samantha?
I think they did a fantastic job. I mean, there's the only thing is that one little thing on the corner that's a little distracting from the actual sculpture itself, but otherwise they did an amazing job with the entire thing. Like you said, the dimension on the vase is amazing, and they did great on it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, and I love that kind of thing where the form is created by the edge of the slices.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I love unintentionally what the wires do right through here when you can see both the foreground and the background at the same time. I think that's really fascinating. So I think that turned out really well.
Yeah.
Then I do want to, I think before we look at the next thing, the next sculpture that was turned in, because it has to do with the this coming up assignment, the structure with the skin. No, I'm sorry, I got my things backwards. Because it is working with structure with the skin, which is another one of the assignments we did. I want to look at this and let's see. I'm going through and I want to look at the best image of it. I think that this is a pretty good one. I think both of the images are pretty good. And I'll tell you, looking at this, I think that the photograph is excellent. I mean, they did everything that we are looking at to do with the photo. One thing that I cautioned against on this object, and I also want to mention, they did a good job creating a recognizable module. But one thing that I want to stress when we're looking at the student examples was that if the module is too flat, it makes it very awkward and difficult to really create form. And we don't want the form to be predictable. That was something else that we talked about. Now on this, it looks to me like the module is a square with a triangle sticking out of the middle. And I think that is really interesting. And I believe that this is a really good start. I'll tell you, to fit the parameters of the assignment, we're talking about hiding some of the structure and being a background for some of the structure with using the skin. This image shows a really good background. The other image shows that the skin is hiding pretty well. What I would like to see is, I would like to see 2 more of these modules attached at uneven points to kind of give it more interaction with the volume of space around it, because I feel that this is really, really, really stable, which is not a bad thing, but it kind of goes against some of what we were talking about last week. And I really like the way that they've made the module, and it's so even and consistent, all of them. But I would like to see 2 or 3 more, and I would like to see them attached in a different way. And maybe that doesn't have to be uneven. Maybe that can be even as well, but it would be really satisfying to see maybe two of these attached right here in the front, so that the flat part is facing the center and the triangle comes out. And then maybe when it's photographed on a point so that it looks not so stable and not so even. But I think that this is a really interesting approach to the assignment. What are your thoughts?
I think this is great. I mean, I just, like I said, I'm a little behind, so but
Oh no! Oh, wait a sec. Which one am I sharing?
I see the Lion Man.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is what I was trying to looking at.
Okay.
Does that make a lot more sense now?
I say I don't think I can do the Lion Man, but I could try. But yes, no, I like that a lot.
Okay, so this is what I was trying to describe, and I'm so sorry. I saw the little blue button that it shows me that I'm sharing, and I thought I was sharing the right one. But what I'm talking about is that the module is this flat square
Uh-huh.
with triangle sticking out. And
Yeah.
here we see all the flat squares, so we only see basically the skin.
Uh-huh.
And on the other photo, we see. Oh, that I'm sorry. That's the second photo. I'll show you the first one. In the first photo, we see basically just the inside of the sculpture. So we only see the structure hide in front of the skin. And one of the issues with this this assignment for the module is that we need to see the structure and the skin balanced. We need to see in one image, we need to see the skin hiding some and supporting some. And here we see the skin is supporting, because here's the structure, the triangles, and Samantha, you can see very clearly what the module is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a great job with that.
Wow.
But with the two different photos, we see one where it's only the skin and one where it's only the structure. And what I was explaining is I think it would be great if they made two more of these modules and then stuck it on so that the skin was towards the center and the structure was coming out, and then maybe take a photo so that this right here is far away from us, and we can see that way. We can see to the inside, we can see the structure, we can see the skin, all those at the same time, and that would be really important. Does that make more sense now?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think the same thing. I think adding a couple more to it, and then just getting the right angle for the picture so you can actually see the skin, but also have the structure pop out somehow too with that.
Yeah, and I really like the way they photoed it.
Yeah.
On the sheet. I think that's really cool, and I don't know how much of it is intentional, but it is always neat when you guys photo stuff and the shadows become really fascinating to look at too.
Yeah.
I think they do. I think that's another really good job.
Mm-hmm.
I am a little bit concerned because right here is very in focus, and this is not a critique of the sculpture itself. This is just something to look at with the photography. But right through here in the background, it's no longer in focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be something I would play with the camera settings a little bit on your phone and see if you can resolve that issue. But I like where this is going. And it's important, again, for everybody to remember that this is the first one that we're looking at. And we'll look at more of them next week to see where people are at and what they're doing. And I won't be grading these until more than half of them are turned in, so we can have a chance to talk about them and you can rework them and turn them back in. as well. So, but does that, going over to that, does that help a
Yeah.
bit in understanding what we're doing?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Okay, now I'm going to exit out of this page. And now we are going to talk about the biomorphic abstraction. So we looked at this a little bit unintentionally, and I'm sorry about that. I know it's confusing when I talk about stuff that we're not even looking at. Well, what we are looking at for this module is something called biomorphic abstraction. Now, this sculpture is referred to as the Lion Man, and I believe it's 40,000 years old. And what is fascinating, Samantha, you can tell right away why people refer to it as the Lion Man, can't you?
Yes, I can.
What are two of the elements that really pop out to you that make sense for that title?
The lion's head, well, like the lion head, but the way that it's standing upright reminds me of a man. So
Yeah. Now, another question I have for you is, are either of those elements, the lion head and the posture of man, are either of those elements really articulated? I mean, do they look realistic at all?
no, not really. Oh,
Yeah, it's not really, is it? I mean,
yeah,
these legs aren't anatomically correct.
yeah,
The proportions are really way off. You know, the head, it's not realistic at all. But what is so fascinating about this sculpture is, even though it's simple, even though it's designed so that it's not um, intensely realistic, we have a pretty good sense of what was intended, because it engages our imagination, and it has just enough information there that we can tell that these are legs. We can tell that there's a pretty good chance that this is masculine. You know, we can tell that these are feet. Here's kind of a back of a calf. We can tell that this is kind of an arm with either a paw or a hand at the end. We can tell that this is a torso, more because it's in between the hips and the legs and the shoulder, something we identify as the shoulders. It almost looks like there's a pelt draped over the shoulders, and and it looks, because we are expecting something along the lines of more human form, because of the way that we can kind of, this suggests a muzzle, it suggests round ears at the top of the head, and we very easily start telling ourselves, oh, that's a lion head. But the things that are important about this is, the artist was trying to communicate something without necessarily restricting themselves to something that is naturalistic or realistic. And this leads me into, the nature of this module is called biomorphic abstraction. Bio has to do with life. Morphic has to do with movement. So this implies something relating to the natural organic world. An abstraction, it usually means a simplification. The abstraction is, a lot of the times, that's how we get the kind of art that develops wallpaper patterns, for example. You get William Morris, who is one of the most influential pattern makers in the 19th century, developed all these floral designs, which are not correct depictions of the floral elements he was using, but they are abstracted enough that they could use them in pattern. And those patterns that William Morris and the people around him came up with are still used today to kind of identify for us what a leaf looks like, what a flower looks like. And a lot of that comes from this Victorian design maker who created wallpaper patterns. So I want to share, I made a PowerPoint where we kind of go through uh, these ideas. Now, can you see this, Samantha?
Yes, I can.
What is it?
It's a tree.
Yeah, it's a red tree.
Yeah, looks like it's
Well,
during the fall.
that kind of helps too.
Yeah.
But is this very naturalistic or is it more abstracted?
It's more naturalistic.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, we can see the light dappling the bark there on the tree, picking out that texture.
Mm-hmm.
These dabs of paint. We really can feel that this is just a barely out of focus tree with
Mm-hmm.
fall foliage and leaves and everything. And what are these right here? What are these lines?
The branches.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can tell all of that.
Yeah.
Now, in this kind of a setting, we're getting given so much naturalistic detail. What is this over here on the left?
Looks like branches from another tree.
Yeah. And what do you think these are in the background?
They are pine trees going up a mountain, it looks like.
Yeah, they're out of focus, but this really reads as a naturalistic scene.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to show this one too. This is one of my favorite. This is the first identifiable American school of painting. It's called Hudson River School, and it is characterized by scenes of nature that feel so big that the human presence is almost incidental. It's a lot of the visual language developed in the Hudson River School of Painting moved forward as romantic and really evocative of nature as being far more than we can tame as human beings. Now, all that. What are these critters right here on the left-hand side?
They're trees.
They're trees. Are they naturalistic or abstracted?
Naturalistic.
Yeah, they're very natural looking. How about here? What are these two critters?
Same trees.
Yeah, and here's a bush over here.
Yep.
What's this? Can you tell?
It looks like it's either a cow or a deer.
Yeah, but it's some kind of animal munching on the grass.
Yeah.
Can you get what this is right here?
It's another animal in between
Okay.
the trees, maybe, or is it a rock?
Oh, it could be. How about this one right here, this white thing?
Looks like a sheep.
Okay.
To me.
And how about here? What do you think these are?
It looks like it's maybe like a little boat and somebody's pulling the boat to shore.
Yeah. How do you know that? Why do you think that?
Because my mind automatically assumes that that's what it is because it's on water.
Yeah, but you can't make out any detail.
Yeah.
There's no detail.
My mind's filling in the blank spots.
Right. Yeah. And this is one of the things that's indicative of a lot of the Hudson River School paintings. The raw nature is very easy to identify. It's very naturalistic. But the animals that are either brought in by humankind or interacting somehow with the human element of the landscape, they really seem to be out of focus. I read this as more of a cow, and maybe this is a horse kind of thing, or a sheep even, like you said. This, I see it as like almost a figure of a person. And this person in the boat, the obvious person and the obvious boat, they're only obvious not because they're naturalistic at all. All these elements are incredibly globby, but because we kind of fill in, like you said, your minds are filling in the blanks. And so the Hudson River School, very naturalistic trees, very naturalistic mountains and sky, but elements that reference humanity a lot of the times are out of focus, tiny, or abstracted to the point where we guess at them because we have a pretty good idea of what that could be. Did you even see the two buildings over here?
I actually didn't. I didn't even notice them until now.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And the only way we have any idea that they might possibly be buildings is that this little gray glob is almost a rectangle, like it could be a window.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a little bit too regular and angular to be the same kind of rocks that we see with the mountains.
Same thing with on the right side. It looks like right above the trees. There's a little
Oh, right
white,
here?
like a yeah, it's like a
Yeah,
little
they
white.
look almost like rooftops or the
Yeah,
fronts of houses or something.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So very naturalistic trees, and human elements seem really globby and abstracted, and that's what the difference is. I did want everybody to focus on these trees because these two trees are pretty realistic. Now this, would you say that this is more abstracted or realistic?
I would say more abstracted. Like you
Uh,
can tell you could tell it's a tree, but it's not realistic at all.
what are some of the elements that push this away from being realistic?
It looks very, I don't know, it just looks very flat. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could absolutely tell that it was a painting that was not going for realism.
yeah. All the leaves look like they were specimens that are pressed flat.
Yeah.
You know, all the flowers are either face on directly or perfectly to the side.
Hmm.
You know, and the background, we only know that this is a meadow or grass because you have these elements of, you know, 5 or 6 blades interspersed here and there so that we make the association. But yeah, it is very stylized. You look at this tree and you compare it with this tree, and this is so much more what you might expect in nature. And I think if we stepped outside right now and looked and saw a tree like this with birds like that, we would be screaming because we would know we were insane. And
Yeah.
it's just not. What's that?
Yeah. This one just kind of reminds me more of like a copy paste all over the picture instead of, or the one before it is, there's nothing the same in the entire picture.
Yeah.
There's different elements in the entire painting.
Yes, very much. And this is just a little bit too staged. And then we move on right here. What is this element here in the top left? This, I believe this is the New Hampshire state flag. What is this element here?
I'm assuming it's a pine tree.
Why? What are the visual cues that tell you it's a pine tree?
The overall shape of it, because as a kid, that's how you would draw little Christmas trees is is you would do the little jagged corners, and then you have the tree stump. But that's just what my mind thinks that it is that it is a pine tree.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Would you say that this is more naturalistic or abstract than the previous one?
Abstract.
Yeah, it is just a silhouette. Again, if you saw this out while you were out hiking, it would freak you out, wouldn't it? I mean, it's
Yes, it
just,
would.
yeah, it is just too unnatural. It's abstracted to the point where it is flat. It is just a silhouette. It's very simple. It's only one color. How many trees have you seen that have been only one color? You know, there's really none.
None. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it like you said, it's just a cutout essentially. Like what there's more detail than what a really young person might consider putting in, but essentially it is that simple cutout we'd make as kids when we draw trees and stuff. Now, moving on to this one, keeping in line with everything that we've seen so far, what do you think this is an image of?
It reminds me of like either Japanese or Chinese writing.
Yeah, it's kanji,
Yeah.
but keeping in the theme with what we've looked at, what do you think it means?
Tree.
Yeah, yeah, this is kanji for tree. So we have a line that symbolizes the vertical trunk. This is that kind of silhouette of the sloping branches. and then we have a horizon line. But would you say that this is more realistic or more abstract than the previous image?
Abstract.
Yeah, very much so. We have essentially this kind of idea distilled down into 4 strokes, and that's it. A line for the trunk, line for the horizon, and then 2 lines representing the slope of the limbs or the foliage of the tree. And this is what we're getting at when I'm talking about abstraction, because abstraction is simplification, and you're stripping away everything that kind of that might be extraneous to the symbol of the thing that you're really connecting to the point where if you don't have the context, you almost don't have any idea what it is. If we weren't talking about trees, is there any way, if you didn't know Japanese, is there any way that you'd have an idea what this might mean?
Absolutely not. I would have no idea.
Yeah, it would be impossible. And then we get to this. This is actually a friend of mine. Keeping in with the theme that we're going on, what do you think that this is a painting that's meant to, what this painting is meant to be?
A tree, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any contextual cues inside of the painting that can lead us to the idea that it might be a tree?
The only thing that would lead me to believe it was a tree is, well, some of the lines make it look like maybe it's a tree trunk, and just the little brown patch at the bottom could be bark.
Yeah, yeah. And when I look at this, I think of out of focus poplars almost. And the only reason I think of that is because they're vertical paint strokes of green. And then that seems to be reinforced, Samantha, just like you said, with a little bit of brown down there at the trunk. And I like, and it's repeated right here. So I think it's valid that we can look at this and see a tree, but it is even more abstracted, I think, than this kanji, because still here you can make some sort of visual relation to this silhouette. And here, everything is almost entirely up to you as the viewer, deciding that these green blobs might potentially be trees and that this brown blob might potentially be a trunk. And I think stuff like that is really fascinating. But this is the kind of element that we go to when we're talking about abstraction. Now, keeping with this theme, what do you think this is a painting of?
I would say a tree, but I don't see it at all.
Yeah. Here, at least, we can guess, oh, yeah, these vertical strokes of green. Green, is usually a color associated with trees, so maybe that could be it. Here, Pete Mondrian was alive at a time where within a single person's lifetime, you went from literally taking your life and a generation of your family's lives in the palm of your hand when you went traveling to almost every home had access within walking distance to a telephone. And you could learn what was going on in the far side of the world in just a matter of hours after it happened. We're talking incredible progress. Just within his lifetime, people went from the first initial designs for bicycle to cars, which is just amazing. But he was, looking at the work that he did, I get the feeling that he was really kind of stressed out about and he does even talk about it too, about wanton technological development and people not taking the time to connect with their communities or finding those spaces of connection. And so one of the things that you see in his paintings that emerged is he parsed everything down to horizontal and vertical lines, as you can see this, on a white canvas, and he would add occasional patches of color. Now, knowing that, would you be surprised that this is actually a landscape painting? Where this is a park, this is a horizon, these represent clouds in the sky above, and this represents a water feature in the park. And these vertical lines tie in to placements of the ideas of trees in the park. With that kind of rationale, can you imagine that? Yeah, that this could potentially be a landscape in that kind of abstracted style.
Yeah, when you kind of break it down like that, I could see it. But if it was not broken down that way for me, I would have not even come to that conclusion at all.
Yeah, without context, there's no way of knowing. Now, I have been challenged. People have said, no, that isn't a landscape. It's just doing lines. Well, I will show you. This is how he would paint a landscape. We look right here. All 6 of these are painted by Pete Mondrian. When he started, the world was simpler. He was an expressionist, like Van Gogh, an impressionist expressionist. And as you look through, this one came first, then this, then the bottom left, then the middle of the bottom, and the bottom right. And all of them are of a tree. And I'm pretty sure they're all the same tree. And I'm pretty sure that these two are images of this tree, but from the other side, because of the way that the trunk is angled. And you can see that right here, and see that angle repeated right here, and kind of see it right there. But if we just isolated this image right here, yeah, maybe you could potentially make it out as a tree. But right here, if you just saw that by itself, would you have any idea that that was actually a tree, let alone the same tree?
No, I wouldn't have.
And I think you can see the growth of his visual vocabulary as he's portraying a tree, something as simple as a tree, where here we get a lot of textural quality, a lot of visual elements that help us to see kind of simplified limbs, but we can still see it as a tree. Here, he's taken away a lot of the color, so we just see shades of gray, and we see the essentially the tree limbs, but now they're simplified and continued in places where it almost looks like a bunch of ropes hanging. Here, he simplified it even more. He's brought in a little bit more color, but the colors don't have an awful lot of relationship to what the tree actually looks like. And feels like he's simplifying it even more. Here, it's not really simple, but he's simplified all the lines so that they're either vertical or horizontal. And he continues that, making it even simpler and simpler and simpler until we get to this one where, without the context that it's actually related to that tree, there's no way of knowing. And then you get here, and that tree is somewhere over here in the landscape painting. And there's absolutely no way of knowing because it is so abstracted. Now, and that's something that is really important to get as we I guess before I go on, can you see the relationship that all these images have to each other as that tree becomes more and more abstracted and simplified to the point where, like you said, there's absolutely no way of knowing, pretty much. Well, I want to go back to this now. That was a slideshow, and you can see it. It is on the next page of the module after this one, and there's a link to it, and you can see it and go through it yourself. But what you're going to be doing yourself is looking at elements around you, organic components of the world around you, and taking that, looking at the forms, finding the elements of those forms that are attractive to you, and then combining those into your own biomorphic abstracted sculpture. And I love seeing this lion because you can see how the artist simplified the leg. It's not even the right proportions, but we do kind of see the calf. We do kind of see the ankle. Maybe the toes are broken off at some point. But what's really interesting to me is that this artist yeah, we can see kind of elements of a human leg there, but because of the way that they abstracted it, simplified it, and some of the other lines that they put in, we can almost see the silhouette of an extended cat's leg as well. And this almost looks like it could potentially be a paw that is repositioned to function as where a human foot would be. We look at these arms, and they don't look very human. We assume that they're arms because they kind of correspond to that. But even at the end of the arm, we see this thing, and it kind of suggests a paw a little bit. Like we said earlier, the ears are not fully formed. We have a pretty good idea of what they are. Now, this sculpture, it is 40,000-year-old wood. So a lot of it is missing or worn away potentially. But it's fascinating to me that the artist left enough of this detail as they were abstracting things that they've essentially given us permission to overlay a lot of meaning onto it, which I think is really incredible. These different videos talk about different kinds of things like that. Like this one shows how the Lion Man was constructed, and they talked about it a little bit more. Another really good example of this kind of abstraction is the Venus votaries. Have you seen the Venus of Willendorf? Okay, I'm gonna look for that really quick, and I'll show that to you. This is the Venus of Willendorf. And now I'm pretty sure you recognize this, don't you? Yeah, exactly. There's actually been dozens and dozens and dozens of these kind of votaries that seem to be celebrations, and you can see several different versions. Um, they seem to be celebrations of feminine forms, and some of these are just absolutely amazing. One of my favorite is the Venus of Brassempoi, where it looks to me like they have, this. She has like this netted headdress somehow, and I want to see a feminine jawline and chin. But as you can see, there's so little detail that a lot of that is overlaying what we see. And I think that one of the things that, we talked about context before. Sometimes with abstraction, things are so abstract you can't tell what it is at all without any kind of context. These were all found in spaces that, coming from our 20th century perspective, really feel like they could be sacred spaces, almost chapels. What is interesting is my suspicion is a lot of these may have been made by men for women to use, or they could have been made entirely by women. It wouldn't surprise me if they were made by women. Are you aware that there's actually evidence to demonstrate that there's a good chance 75 to 85% of cave art that's 40,000 years old was created by women? There is a statistician working at the University of Wisconsin was going through handprints found in the paintings on cave walls. And there is something interesting. I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute because nobody's going to believe me unless I show you. But if you put your hand up like that, most men, this middle finger is going to be longer. I guess this middle finger is going to be longer. For most women, these two fingers are either the same length, or these two fingers are the same length, or actually this finger might be the same length or longer than the middle finger. It's a little bit different. But for the great majority of men, this finger is obviously longer. For the great majority of women, that's not the case. And by extrapolating from that, the statistician looked at the handprints on cave walls that were made at the same time as the cave paintings and found out 75 to 85% of them, depending on the site, were most likely made by women. And it's just, I don't know. I think that's pretty wild, but by extrapolation, we can guess that, a lot of cave art was most likely made by women, and which puts things in a completely different perspective, I think, for most of us. I just think that's fascinating. Anyway, I'm going to go back to sharing again. As soon as I can get my computer working, sigh. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the most thoughtless thing that my youngest ever did was move somewhere else because I need a child to show me how to use my tech.
I think that's how my mom feels. She's always calling me to try to fix things, and it's very hard to phone.
Yeah, very, very much. And a big part of it is because not necessarily because older people just can't catch on, but I think that people under 30 have grown up in a world of very rapidly changing tech, and it is a lot less intimidating for many younger people than it is for older people that did not grow up in that same kind of environment.
Yeah, because I was lucky because I grew up before all the technology, or it was like just brand new coming into it. And so I was outside my childhood, running around the neighborhood, coming home when the streetlights come on. But now everything's on their tablets or phones. And so, yeah.
Well, yeah, they're glued to their hands. Yeah. Well, so this, and it's interesting. We're talking about that at the same time we're looking at this. This is some of the oldest art on the planet that is made by human beings, and I don't know. It could be aliens. I kind of doubt it, but and it is interesting to me that it does feel kind of mysterious, but at the same time kind of approachable. This is not really frightening. It looks, I just think that is really fascinating. It kind of draws us in. So definitely for everybody, watch these videos. And this one talks about how the Lion Man was created and everything. Now, when we talk about abstraction, I do want to mention really quick before we go on, there are two kinds of abstraction. And one is what we've been talking about, kind of this biomorphic abstraction, where things are abstracted from real world elements. Like we can see the Lion Man face. We can see that this could be a leg, even though it's not naturalistic. But the other is called non-objective abstraction. Non-objective means exactly what the word, pull apart the word and it says non-object. So non-objective abstraction is going to be things like when somebody is painting letters. Letters are not, the letters that we have now are not based on anything other than symbolic use. And now, anciently, the letters that kind of grew up into the English or Roman letters that we're familiar with may have had more reference to what people thought of when they heard the sounds. But for the most part today, that is not the case. They are generally going to be non-objective. What is the difference between the letters like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and English? Do you think that those were more abstracted or non-objective? I put you on the spot there, but hieroglyphs will have like wavy lines, or they'll have like a hand like that, or they'll show a feather or a bird or a person, and those were a lot more simplified, abstracted shapes that people saw every day. Whereas the letters that we use today, they don't mean anything outside of the associations we give to them. And that's what the difference is. Generally, when we talk in this class about abstraction, we're going to be referencing things that actually began at some point with the real world. And if we're talking about non-objective abstraction, we're going to be talking about artwork that's based on things like math concepts or sounds or things that really don't have a solid connection with the physical experienced world. So it's something to think about. And I believe that there is even an element in your book that's referenced in that for the quiz. Now with the biomorphic abstraction, this is where that realistic to non-objective spectrum goes. You know, we look at how it starts with a tree, becomes stylized, becomes way abstracted to the point where you just don't recognize it at all without any sort of frame of reference. And then some of these videos show how people did carve and did do different things. And on this one, I am actually demonstrating the whole process that we'll go through. The first half is me carving and things, the foam. And that's what I want you to pay attention to. Later on, I also talk about paper mache, and that's what we'll talk about in another module. Well, right here in this last paragraph, I talk about looking at organic elements around you and using those to inspire the form that you make. And I don't want you to feel like you need to create something that everybody recognizes. That's not the point of this at all. The point of this is to create something that has elements that flow together organically. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to find where I hold up the sculpture. So you can see what mine looks like. And I'm not having a lot of success on that. Let's see. There we go. So this is the kind of object that I made where I carved it from the foam. I have a hole in here. Everything is smooth. It is very important because this is biomorphic. It is very important that your elements are smooth and blended together. You have sandpaper, you have hasps or files that you can carve with. And it's really important that you use those things to smooth this object down as smooth as you can make it that makes sense for the kind of object. But you can see that this is kind of based on uh, parts of things that I would see, like perhaps bones or succulent plants are really good because their leaves are shaped so weirdly. Stuff that grows at the bottom of the ocean, all those kinds of things make bananas, broccoli, those kinds of things make really good inspirations. But you can tell that even though some of these forms are curving and maybe related to like the curves on teeth or things like that, I purposely did not make this so it's recognizable. And that's one of the points. Like unless somebody gives you the full context of all the pieces that came together, you should not be able to recognize your final shape as anything relating to the world. And here, this is the background. That description, I don't want you to work on it until after you watch all the videos and look at how each of these people created things that deal with this idea of non-objective abstraction. And I show this video again. I really like this one. This is an excellent example of non-objective abstraction. And in just a minute, we'll get to a point where we can see the whole thing. Hopefully you guys remember watching this video when we talked about the elements of artistic critique. All of these are images of the same sculpture. And here's the actual sculpture. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. All these three are biomorphic abstractions. Can you kind of see where some of these shapes and forms might relate to the organic world around you? Are you seeing that? Okay, good. Like this has a lot of relationship to different human elements. This has even more because here we can see on this green figure in the background, a neck and a distorted head. So this is even more related to human form. This, I have no idea where these forms come from, but you can see how the lines are smooth, it's smoothed off. There's different elements of, sometimes the curves are really shallow, sometimes they're a little bit stronger, but it feels organic, and that's what we want to go with. You can, I would prefer you didn't use any things that are obviously eyes or noses or mouths or anything like that, but you could do something where you're working with the outside curve of a nostril and take it out of context, or maybe the underside of a lip or a chin, take it out of context and add it to something else. Or you're working with plants where you really like how on a plant, on either side of a vein in a leaf, the material kind of curves in towards the leaf, and you take that shape and you play with that shape and blow it up. That's the kind of thing that we're going for here, rather than making anything that represents anything. I'm sorry, rather than making anything that has a direct one-to-one correspondence with anything. Now, I want to show you something else. This one right here, this I think is amazing. This is called fish. And what is so astounding to me about this is that I can't see any anatomical relation to a fish rather than the overall form. But when we look at it, we're going to watch it really quick here, this element really quick, as a person's walking around. It feels like it is an object that could swim through water. And the organic nature comes that the silhouette does not feel industrial. It feels organically created. We look at the side view. This is a very organic kind of form, and everything is smoothed off. And that's the kind of thing that we're looking for, that kind of element. So Constantine Brancusi is an excellent example, but he also did stuff that was a lot more blocky. If we look at this, this shows some of his works, and then we get right here to this piece. This is called the kiss. I'm sorry, right there. This is called the kiss. And when we look at it right at the beginning, we think, what the heck is this? And you can feel that our organic forms that don't feel industrial. There's these horizontal lines going across that aren't completely flat or straight, but they feel kind of curving a little bit. There's this vertical line right here that kind of curves in and out, does some interesting things. It is carved from a block that's obvious, but we've got all these other organic forms. And then knowing that it's called the kiss, maybe this is hair in the back of a person's head, and maybe these are lips. Then suddenly this comes into focus, and these are arms. So there's some really fun stuff that Constantine Brancusi did, but for the purposes of this assignment, we are going more towards the smooth organic rather than the blocky. In fact, one of the elements of the assignment that I mentioned in the assignment description is you can't have any surfaces that right now are on your block. You have to sand everything down, and you also need to stay away from the blocky nature of the block. So you can't actually do this. I do want you to look at the different textures they used, but something like this, if they started with an original block, you can't see any element of that. And here you can, because the person Brancusi just essentially smooths down the edges. We don't want that. We want you to make an organic form that does not feel like it started off as the block you got in your kit. We do have the artist review. This is a little bit different than the other ones that you've done. Oh, I guess before getting to that, let's see. Can you see me cycling through the pages? I should have asked. Okay. I am cycling through the pages. Okay, good. Okay. Jan Arp, Jan Hans Arp is really good at creating forms that kind of fit this. Barbara Hepworth is another one. Uh, and you'll get kind of a feeling for these kinds of ideas. Um, more, these kinds of forms are really good, very organic. Isamu Noguchi has some pretty amazing stuff. And again, we're not going to watch the whole video, but I did want to see if we can find some of his sculptures. Now, you look at this, these almost appear to be just forms, almost random forms. But can you see where the organic components come into play? I'm sorry, with this in particular? I don't know what this is supposed to be, but this is kind of, this is not the best example, the kind of thing I'm looking for, like this is. This, oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. This is a really beautiful example of the kind of thing we're looking at. It feels organic. It doesn't, you don't see the outside edges, the corners, the flat surfaces of the current block that you have. You can tell that the person carved a lot of that away to give this kind of flowing form. Now, it's not all completely curved and smooth, but we can see the areas that are supposed to be are consistent. You don't see a lot of chisel marks. And right here, the only real sharp line is where this plane kind of scoops in, and then from this outside larger form, and then you get this smaller dome emerging from this area that was kind of scooped out. And those kinds of lines are gonna be just fine. But the big takeaway is that this feels very organic, and it doesn't feel like you can label it like as an avocado or a big toe or anything like that. And those are the kinds of things that we're really interested in. Now, your artist review for this, you're going to be looking at those artists, those 5 different artists. And one of the things that you're going to be doing is approaching this slightly differently. We've been doing like 3 paragraph essays where you are applying your understanding of critique using critical thinking to address those questions. Now, with this, what we're going to be doing is this is actually going to be 5 paragraphs long. The first one is you'll need to kind of articulate why you chose the artist and the artist's work that you're going to be working with. Notice that right here at the end, it says embed an image of the piece you write about. You really need to find an image of that you're going to write on from one of these 5 artists and put that into this essay as well, which I don't think we did in any previous ones. And so after your first paragraph, we kind of introduce what you're doing. The remaining 4 paragraphs, remember a paragraph is 3 to 5 sentences long. You're going to refer to the same artist and that same work that you have the photo of in the paper. And each of these each of these 4 paragraphs are going to be addressing a different element of the work. Exterior and interior forms is going to be paragraph 2. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go in and change the numbering on these so that it makes more sense. Primary and secondary contours, you're going to describe their placement and what they look like, what they feel like for the next paragraph. Paragraph after that, you're going to be talking about positive and negative forms. And last paragraph, you're going to be talking about static and dynamic forms. Now, right now, I'm just going to go ahead and edit those numbers so that they make sense. So we go in here. So paragraph 2, exterior and interior forms. Paragraph 3, primary and secondary contours. This and what these are will be described in the book for the chapters for this quiz. the paragraph 4 is going to be positive and negative forms, and the last paragraph 5 is going to be static and dynamic forms. Does that make sense for this one? And how long again is a paragraph? How big is a paragraph?
Like 3 to 5 sentences.
Yes, perfect. That's exactly right. 3 to 5 sentences. So I will get ones of these that people turn in. They don't get full points because they just had one sentence for each of these. And for instead of a paragraph. And for each of those paragraphs, you're going to be describing on that work that you chose, what do the exterior and interior forms look like and where are they located? What makes them exterior and interior? You're going to be doing the same thing with primary and secondary contours. What makes them primary and secondary? Now, if you're one of these people that already turned in this essay and you haven't addressed that, feel free to go back, rework it, now that we've talked about it, and resubmit it. Not a big deal. And that will be just fine. And then when you actually get to doing the carved biomorphic abstraction, then this is the next assignment to not do for a couple weeks. What you're going to be doing is taking all those things. We're going to talk about this 2 more times between now and when this is due, so we can learn some more about it. But what I have here is some really good examples. The Tate talks about what biomorphic is, and these are biomorphic forms and different things like that. Go and look at these links. This is a link to my exceedingly brilliant demonstration. It's an hour and a half long and will drive you absolutely bonkers. But you can have it in the background, then you can see what I'm doing when I'm carving. And I also have an inspiring demonstration that's linked to the same kind of thing up there. But what you're going to be doing, this is foam. And a lot of these videos talk about carving foam, but others talk about balsa wood and plaster. Carving is going to be essentially the same with just slightly different tools. So just as you watch the tutorial ones, if you can find a better one than what I have, let me know. But the dense styrofoam, you can use a utility knife, or I did a lot of my carving just with a file. And one of the ways that you can get started on this is take your block, hold up one of the flat faces facing you, and then draw with a pen the parts that you don't want to see. And then use a knife to cut those off, or use a file to cut those off. And if you do that, rotate the block 90 degrees, do the same thing with the next side, and just do that all the way around. And very quickly, you'll get a form that starts to not look like that original block very much, but you'll have basically the rough portions cut out for your sculpture. Then you can just go in with a file and file it down. And I really love these examples because they're done by very different people, but they all address this idea of organic forms and a biomorphic abstraction. This kind of reminds me of almost like a scapula with a hole in it. And I wonder, it looks to me like a lot of their inspiration came with how bones are formed, how bones are shaped. This makes me think of curling loops, and it almost reminds me of things like some of the base of lettuce, or those kinds of a thing, but with looping added to it. Like this right here reminds me of almost like a broccoli stalk. I don't know what the inspiration was, but Samantha, are you able to kind of see some of the organic inspiration in this?
Yeah, and that one that you're just talking about reminds me of like a seashell almost.
Yeah. Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Very cool. And this one, this kind of makes me think of maybe the artist, it looks to me like this is a kneeling woman almost. And because here I see hips and knees coming down, and this kind of flares out a little bit, comes up and flares out again up here. It almost makes me think that maybe this is her head, these are her shoulders, this is her torso, and her hips are right here, and there's our upper thighs and knees. But again, there's very little uh, definitive information in this. It feels to me like almost anybody could see whatever they wanted in it. But the things I want to stress though is this doesn't look anything like the block, and it is very curvy. It's very organic, and it flows really beautifully. It's very smooth. This one almost looks to me like some sort of pelvis that's kind of distorted a little bit, just because of the way it's formed. And I love that. It looks very much like bones are coming together. And with that, this almost looks like it's like from an animal's spine or something, where the bone is just really, really smoothed, maybe for being out in the desert for years. But do you see any of that? Does it kind of remind you of like an element of a spine or something, like a vertebra?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It looks like a vertebrae.
Yeah, but again, I want to stress that these are beautiful examples of how a person was able to smooth it out. Now, yours is going to be the same color as the block when you're all done. You're going to cover it with paper mache in a later one, sand it down, make sure that it's really smooth, and then add color and texture to it. Ultimately, that's what we're going to be doing. But what I really want you to get out of this is that you see those organic components, how smooth it is, how much it does not look like the original block. And those are the things that are really important to take on this. Let's see, I'm going to the next one. For this one, the discussion as well. Um, remember the 4 tools of artistic critique? Do you remember what those are?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay, the first one is describe, where you answer questions about what it looks like, how big it is, what the texture is, those kinds of things that you can actually see with your eyes. Second one is analyze, and this is where you start extrapolating how it was put together, how the artist got those textures and those forms. Third is interpret, where you start guessing at what possibly could this mean. What could these forms maybe be alluding to? And the fourth is it successful? You're evaluating it. And when we look at the assignment, instead of just submitting an image of your biomorphic abstraction carving, what you're going to be doing is looking at 3 of your fellow students' work. And you're going to be structuring a comment that needs to include at least 40 words, and it must be specific. And you're going to be referencing the tools of artistic critique. You don't need to be using all the tools, but I want you to be thinking of those kinds of questions: describe, analyze, interpret, and evaluate, and use that as you answer A, B, and C. So maybe this is going to be 3 sentences. The first sentence is you're going to be talking about how this sculpture involves the viewer. How does it address? Is it intriguing? Is it interesting? Is it calming? Maybe is it something that invites the viewer in, or is it something that makes a viewer more curious about it? Then you're going to be using the kinds of thoughts that you gather from revisiting tools of artistic critique. You're going to be, in your answer, B is, how is a sculpture developed in interesting and engaging shapes? So this is maybe more on the analysis part. Does it look like they spent a lot of time smoothing? What are the shapes that are very interesting to you? And how are they engaging to you? And then the third one is, we talked a little bit about biomorphic abstraction. We're going to be talking more about it next week. What are the kinds of things that you can see I need to correct the spelling on that. What are the kinds of things that you can see that relate this to biomorphic abstraction. You know, how organic is it? How does it feel? Do you see anything that makes you think of other things like knuckle bones or plants or bark on a tree? So, and you're going to be crafting all these together into one paragraph, essentially, that's 40 words long. If you want to, you can separate it out and label them A, B, and C and make each answer a separate sentence. And that's fine too. Either one, if you'd like to do that, that is just fine. I'm going to edit this right now so I get the right spelling. There we go. Now, we're going to be talking about this again next week, but until we get there, does this kind of make sense to you about what we're moving into? I would recommend, before moving ahead on this, looking at your book and going through that first quiz, and then do everything else in that module that leads up to that. Now, of course, this weekend we're looking for structure and skin. I do want there to be some intellectual overlap, and if you're still working on structure and skin next week, that is not a problem at all. But we're going to be looking at the initial structure and skin sculptures next week, as well as talking more about the organic biomorphic abstraction. You know, answering whatever questions people have, and we're going to also be talking about the next element of the research, which is everybody selected an artist for the people that did the artist research thing, and people have been working on the annotated bibliographies and correcting them. The next one is making a video of a PowerPoint, and I'll talk about that next week and the following week as well, on the easiest way to record those. And I did want to mention that every class, there's usually a couple people that really don't want to hear their own voice, and that's fine. What you can do that several people have been really successful at, and this is for those artistic critiques you're going to be doing later on as well, you can write out everything and put it into an AI voice program and have the AI be whatever voice you want. Nobody's had Oscar the Grouch or Big Bird voice yet. Either of those could be, are up for grabs. But last year, there was a young lady that was very composed, that her voice was of a really smart alecky British middle-aged movie narrator kind of guy. And it was hilarious. It was jarring because I knew who she was, and this voice was so unlike her. And then a semester before that, another very poised, very proper, very articulate woman had her grandpa do the voiceover, and he is like 14 packs a day, Smoker Joe biker guy, and it was it's saying, "Hi, this is Sherry, and I'm doing my report on," and it was hilarious. But you don't have to have your own voice. You can record whatever voice you want to use. You can use your roommate, having them read your thing. It just needs to be your words, regardless of what voice it's in. And we'll talk about more of that later. So, do you have any questions or anything on what we've talked about today?
Nope, I don't think so.
All right. How are you feeling about where you're at with the class and things?
I'm feeling okay, especially because, like I said, we've emailed a little bit, and I know due dates are not set in stone, and so turn things in when we can. And so I feel a lot better with that, and I'm working on getting caught up, and yeah.
Okay, good. It's life happens, and if you were an absolutely normal person, you wouldn't honestly be taking this class as an internet class. You'd be in the classroom with other normal people, relatively normal people. But and so I am happy to be flexible. Anybody who's taken a class from me knows that. So yeah, I'm glad that we're able to work things out, and I'm glad that you're taking care of yourself as well. But And I'm hoping we'll have more updates in the next couple of weeks with the service learning thing as well. That is a fascinating project that the individual is doing. And we don't have a lot of people that do service learning. And a big part of that is because when you're doing the artist research, you're in control of every aspect of it. When you're doing service learning, it can be really unsettling because you're not in control at all. I mean, and I have to have the deadlines be flexible, otherwise you're sunk. So, but I'm glad I was able to answer whatever questions you had. Um, if there does need to be any more clarification for anybody that watches this, please let me know. Please email me, and we can talk about it more next week as well. But you have a pretty good handle on this, what is needed for the structure and skin, right? Okay, that was the big thing that we wanted to talk about, and I'm so glad that one person was brave enough to turn their thing in way ahead of everybody else. So we should have about 2/3 of them to look at after this weekend. So we'll look at those on Tuesday and touch on that a little bit, and then dive more thoroughly into the biomorphic abstraction. But thank you very much, Samantha. Any last words of wisdom before we go?
Nope.
Okay. And no, any last questions or anything?
No, I'm good.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will look forward to visiting with you and everybody else next weekend.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye.